What's good, guys? The Novice back for another review. I'm reviewing another book today. Guess what book it is? I don't know if you can see this. 1984 by George Orwell. Obviously, this is like seen as a classic and all that stuff, and there's obvious parallels with some stuff we like today that people always talk about. You always hear people like mention certain they reference, oh, this is Orwellian or something like this. This is so 1984, whatever. I've been wanting to read this book maybe since I was like 16, and I've had this copy for years. My dad bought it for me. Oh, he didn't buy it for me. I think he got it for free in some kind of fair to do with a newspaper, the Times, whatever. I'm only going to talk about the highlights of this book for me personally, as far as storytelling. And then if I reference any ideas, it's going to be more personal to my life, and that's how I'm going to relate it. So, what were the highlights of this for me? For the highlights of this book, oh, you know what? Let me clarify for people who don't know. This book is essentially a dystopian novel about a dictatorship government like any that represses speech, but specifically, they don't police in a traditional way. No one fears actual police. What they fear is thought police. People who don't use the right language called newspeak, and they don't engage in I'll get to it, but something called doublethink, where even if you know something to be false, like for example, Big Brother, which is how they refer to the government, is like a concept of like the surveillance state in this world. Big Brother is the government who invented the aeroplane. You know that's not true in this world because the aeroplane was invented before this government came in existence. But it doesn't matter because you have to train yourself to believe it, to the point where people get arrested and they get taken to like camps and in prison because they mumble like discontent with the government in their sleep. In their sleep, people get caught and like mumbling, I hate this government. Oh shit, get him! Like bellied up, they enter your house. It's that serious in this world. That's just to cover the basic gist of what this tale is, and it revolves around the point of view of a guy called Winston Smith. The highlights of this book: Winston's affair with Julia. He's a younger character, and the reason why I like her and her dynamic with Winston is because he seems like so. They both seem so kind of. They accept that just they're not gonna make it through this life under this current regime. There's a phrase that I'm really surprised it's not like a memeable. I say memeable, probably because it's so depressing. But we are the dead, right? So you know your life is forfeit as it exists right now, but the concept of freedom, of like truly living free, to do what you can in your own, because you have the private right to do so and the human right, that is so special that you would die for it. And that just, I don't know what it is. Like recently, the reason why that resonates with me is because recently, with stuff that's been happening in the news, personal things, I've been thinking a lot about like my own sense of mortality. So stuff like that reminds me that no, life does have meaning, even though you die. That I'm going to die, no matter what. There's no like reset. There's no retake. I was a slacker growing up, so that was me, and I've had to come to terms with that. And it's scary, but it's supposed to be, because it's making me want to understand how to build my own sense of drive to want to motivate myself constantly throughout my life, and not just say that to you because it feels I'm so good at just repeating that to myself, but wanted to truly like commit to that in my actions and build that kind of sense of have that teacher in my head and tells me, you know what, you can push harder. That attracts me through their dynamic because she's a younger character who all she's known is this regime. Winston is a character who his perspective is he's not even sure of his own the power of his own memories because he knows he existed in a time where the revolution and like these ideas weren't quite prevalent, but he doesn't. The nature of the government is to make kind of all memory itself of the past seem like a forgotten concept. So you could, I'll give an example. This mic, right? If I'm aware when I was younger of, let's say, a karaoke party at a pub or something, I could be convinced in this world of 1984 that no, that never existed. There was no such thing as people singing and dancing. That's just a crime. What would you call it? Crime stop, right? The idea that you're thinking of inherently like immoral things. No, you're thinking of heretical things. That's not a concept that we do. Yeah, you will be convinced, and he's convinced that he's an insane person. And that's another thing I like about this book. That throughout this book, I don't. Is do you know what this book reminds me of? Almost movies like Inception. Because the same way I'm not entirely sure if Cobbs, played by the main character, played by DiCaprio, the same way I'm not sure if that entire movie wasn't just like a massive dream he was having about maybe his past life and his experiences, as well as his wife just being constant in his mind. I don't understand if this entire book is maybe him kind of having a massive hallucination from all of the from something that happens to him in this book. I was about to spoil something. I want you guys to read it if you haven't. But I take it much more seriously here as opposed to Inception. Inception to me, it feels like a thriller and an action thriller. So it has more of a spunky feel to it, whereas this is like you're supposed to feel the dread for a reason. That's the unique selling point of this book, among others. So yeah, that different perspective jump together, and also just first and foremost, I like the idea of those two together. Like Winston and Julia seem so happy, and that was maybe my favorite part of the book. I was surprised by how much I liked it. It started as kind of subversion of expectations, and it didn't. I don't want to spoil it. Fuck. Anyway, something else that I like, a big highlight of this book for me, the concept of doublethink that I mentioned just now, was essentially when you. I don't even know completely what doublethink is. I think that's the point of the concept. It's meant to describe thinking something that is contradictory in and of itself. The sky is red. You know it's blue. You look outside, and I'm looking at the sky right now. I know it's blue. No, the sky's red. You know why? Big Brother says so. If you disagree, okay, let me get these cuffs and I'll send you to the labor camp. It's that simple. There's so many things in this world. I'm going to relate it to personal life. It reminds me of throughout my life that needs to, by omission mostly, that needs because of my background, because of where I grew up, arguably because of certain people in my family, not saying things that I believe to be true because it seems inconvenient for like the narrative that I'm supposed to uphold, right? I'm not gonna get into examples because I don't want that kind of heat on me. But yeah, it just reminded me of that, like stuff that is plain as day, and like, a lot of confirmation bias, and that was another appeal with this book to me. The things that confuse me, but for once, as opposed to if you see my review of the book Clockwork Orange, I had this issue with a lot of the slang and a lot of the concepts in this world, like what? How is it free will? How are you really stopping crime if you do so and so experiment? It didn't make quite sense. Whereas this one is not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to stop you from doing things, saying things, and thinking things that are anti this government, that are anti, you know, this regime. And you understand, and now thinking about it, I understand why books like this inspire kind of V for Vendetta type stories. There's a movie I watched when I was younger that this book reminded me of called Equilibrium with Christian Bale. I like that movie, even though the action scenes they don't live up. But yeah, that's essentially my closing thoughts about this book. That this book is really is one to it's food for thought. It's stuff that you think about more after. For me personally, I thought about more after reading it. I finished this like a few days ago. Then when I was reading it, I was just thinking more about, oh, is Winston gonna be alright? Is this a story about kind of the realities of life that some shitty things just happen sometimes, or is it about some hope at the end of the tunnel, like a lot of stories that I've known growing up are your Harry Potters, so on. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Tell me what you guys think down below. If you've read this book, if you haven't, would you read it based on this recommendation? Are you like interested enough? I liked it. I don't know about you guys, but tell me your thoughts down below. If you like this video, please press that thumbs up button. It helps me out with the algorithm. More people like you see these videos. Share it on or with your friends. And please feel free to check out any of my other videos. That's it. Signing off.